All right, and we are officially live for the author interview with JCM Berne, author of some books you might have heard of. Wistful Ascendant, it's good. Return of the Griffin, also good. And Blood Reunion, amazing. And I am joined by my good friend Kayla from Kay's Hidden Shelf. And guys, introduce yourselves.
I think Joe should go first. He's the guest of honor here.
I'm JCM Berne.
Age before beauty, let's go.
There's no doubt on either of those dimensions where any of us lie, right? You can call me Joe. Everyone does. I wrote the three books that Andrew just showed you, and that are over Kayla's shoulder, of which I have no copies left because I shipped out my last ones today, which is kind of funny. Those are my babies, and Andrew and Kayla are kind enough to have invited me here to talk about stuff. Hello. Oh, we got our friends going in the chat. That's fantastic. Very excited. And I'm a YouTuber now. I've got my fourth video in editing, 3 already up. So I'm very excited. I'm coming for you guys. My 57 subscribers. I'm on my way.
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But very different channel than what you guys are doing. I don't really review books.
You're doing what, AuthorTube or?
I don't know what it's called. I'm just putting videos up where I talk about topics about books that I can't, like definitions and philosophy. And Kay's hair does look good. The glasses are good. So
my hair doesn't look amazing. I went to Great Clips. I spent $15 on this, so I'm wearing a hat.
I gotta get a beanie with like one of like the symbol that Tori wears and like
the Red Rising Howler symbol.
Yeah. I've never even read Red Rising, but I want the beanie now. I always see Tori in it. I'm very jealous.
Speaking of hardcovers, I've got those.
So jealous.
Keep talking. Keep talking.
International shipping is not fun, Kayla. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I sent it to
mechanics.
Somebody, and I was like, oh man. Yeah.
There we go.
They look so good.
Beautiful hardcovers as well.
Thank you.
I believe, just before we get started, if you haven't read Joe's books, this is going to be a non-spoiler discussion. And I believe I've got your page in Silverstone Books linked in the description box down below, where you can pick up copies of these books. If you want to support an indie bookstore, I highly recommend Silverstone Books. I don't get any kickbacks. I just love what Kevin is doing.
That's excellent. That's a great idea. Kayla, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kayla. I have a channel called Kay's Hidden Shelf where I talk about books, mostly fantasy, some sci-fi, and random other books put in there. I do book reviews and I interview authors, among other things, and book discussions. So I am very excited to be here and talk about one of my favorite series so far, because I am hoping there are more books coming.
Yeah, there are.
Excellent.
Yeah, speaking of, one of the things that you're very, very adamant that you were going to pull off is it's 16 books, right?
25.
25.
25.
My daughter drives by that.
Pick a perfect square. It could be 16, 25, 36. Let's see how long I live.
Okay. All right. You know what? Why not go for just, I don't know, 30, 36. Let's go for 36.
I'm going to, okay, so it's been kind of a running joke. Somebody asked me 20, because I think Jim Butcher said that about Harry Dresden at some point. I've never actually verified this. So I'm like, yeah, 25 sounds good. I don't have a plan for 25 books. I don't have like specific, like laid out, okay, book 22, this will happen. I know where I want the story to go. I know where I want it to end. I know the kind of changes that have to be made along the way. And could I fit that into 17 books? I'm sure I could. Could I fit it into 6? No. Right? Like I know it's going to be like a substantial number of books. I know where the next few are going. It's not, we're getting somewhere, but we're not getting there. So I say 25 is kind of a joke. Not really a joke.
Fair enough. Where did Rohan come from? Where did Wistful come from? Like these are some fantastic ideas. Like, and I've heard you talk about like Invincible and stuff like that in the past. But this feels slightly different than Invincible to me personally.
So I was in an interview with Chris the Bookaholic, and he said, Joe, you're very inventive. And I'm like, no, Chris, I steal from lots of places that you're not familiar with, right? So like this is the secret to being like, to seeming very creative. Like I have a wide variety of, stuff media I've consumed, a lot of comics, a lot of manga that a lot of my readers haven't. And I'm just stealing from stuff you're not familiar with. Where did Rohan come from? Rohan's, there's lots of aspects to it, but a lot of it did come from Invincible. I don't know, should I keep talking? Andrew left. I feel weird. I
No,
guess
it's okay. Keep going.
Oh, keep going. So Rohan came. There's a lot of similarities with a lot of characters. I remember Tori brought up Baroni Kenshin. I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of similarities there. This sort of reluctant former soldier, a guy with like very serious, very good at violence, but trying to solve problems without violence because he doesn't want to solve problems with violence anymore. So there's a lot of similarities there. The metaphysics, the sort of the setup really came from, there was a thing in Invincible that bugged me. And I was like, this doesn't really make sense, doesn't really work. So this is always how I'm motivated to write or come up with ideas for stories. There's something that in a property that I love, there'll be some kind of thing that I see as either a mistake or an inconsistency. And I'm like, well, we have to fix that. And that's
So you love just kind of pulling bits and pieces and kind of just doing your own thing with it, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. That is pretty much all fiction in the last 100 years.
Yeah. There'll be something that bugs me, some inconsistency, some like, I'm always the kind of good person who's going to get annoyed if some character has like a tool at hand that they don't use. Like in Harry Potter, well, if they can time travel in one book, why don't they use that to solve their problems in the next book? That'll bug me. So I'm really insistent on like fixing those problems. And that motivates a lot of the storylines. So.
I mean, that's fair.
So just as a follow-up question, where you're pulling these concepts to help build Rohan and the story, what makes Rohan different? What's that little splash of special sauce that makes Rohan such an endearing character?
I don't know.
I think it's his humor.
Tell me.
The humor, the wit.
I think it's his humor and his humanity.
So what I did with Rohan is a lot of characters that are familiar in fiction, but what I did is, and I hate this is going to sound obnoxious, but I tried not to do the parts that annoy me. So if he's a reluctant hero, he's a reluctant hero. But when he gets pulled into action, I'm trying to limit how whiny he gets. Right. Because it drives me nuts when it's like, oh, the reluctant hero who gets so whiny. Oh my God, I've got to go save the world. Like, dude, just go save the world. Right. Like we get it. You didn't want to save the world by fighting, but you have to, because otherwise there's no world left if you don't save it, and that's where you keep your stuff. So stop whining about it and go do your thing. So Rohan's like, he might be reluctant. You'll see, I really don't want to go fight, but if I don't, the world is destroyed. All right, I'll go fight. He's not going to have this long torture thing. And I tried to make a guy who's clearly, he has guilt about his past, which is, I touch on why he's guilty, but I also get annoyed at characters who are just wallowing in it. They're sitting around drinking themselves to death, abusing, whatever they're doing. People really do that. I'm not saying it's not realistic. I just don't want to read about that. It's annoying. Show me a guy who feels bad about his past, but is really trying to move on and not like wallow in it. And that's Rohan. And then, he's got, I try to make him funny because honestly, I can't not. Like if he wasn't telling jokes all the time, I get bored writing. Like I've tried to write books with a serious main character and I fail. I can't do it. Like after a chapter, I'm like, I'm bored writing this. If he's not making quips, I can't keep going. Like I don't have the discipline. So I had to make him, in that sense, he just had to be, who he is. And then I think people find him endearing because he's struggling. The whole point of Rohan is, I put him in these moral quandaries. And I get readers sometimes who are like, I think he was doing the wrong thing in like book 2. And I'm like, maybe he was. The fact that he did the thing is not me saying he did the right thing. Like Raina Nightingale did a review of Return of the Griffin, where she was like, I think his willingness to do certain things show that he was like he was wrong in the wrong for that. I'm like, okay, you're certainly allowed to think that. I'm not saying it's not a philosophy textbook. I'm not saying he makes the right choice, but he's always trying to do the right thing. Trying to is not the same as doing it.
Right. And I think what you've succeeded at very well is capturing his humanity. He's flawed. He makes mistakes. Yeah. And when you pair that with superpowers, it can get elevated and it's like something that could have been a small issue all of a sudden has massive repercussions. But at the end of the day, he's still just a guy who, happens to have superpowers, and he's got a past. He's got stuff in his past that he's not proud of. He was a rebellious teenager. And I think that's something you did really well. It's because a lot of the times when you're doing an older character, it's easy to just create them with no real backstory. And if you do the backstory, it's just never really explored. But with Rohan, we get to experience like it come back and kind of bite him straight in his rear end. And
Yeah,
I love that kind of stuff.
I mean, can you imagine being like 16 and being like having all these powers? I would have been a huge jerk. I was a huge jerk at 16 without powers.
I think
You
we
know,
all were.
well, yeah, yes, but like even more so.
Maybe Kay. Kay was probably an angel.
No.
No.
Thank you,
No?
though.
Okay. I tried. My son agrees.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually think of any of that when I wrote Wistful Ascending, but then the whole point of Return of the Griffin, people were like, "Oh, are you going to do a prequel novel where you see what he was like as a teenager?" I'm like, "No, I'm not really interested in writing that story like chapter by chapter." But Return of the Griffin is he goes back home and is experiencing the ramifications, what people think of him who knew him as a jerk teenager, and he's like, "I'm not a jerk anymore, but I get why you still think of me that way because I've been gone for 10 years, and that's what you'll remember." So and this was also something I took a little bit from the comic The Griffin, which this also is a huge influence on me, which is like a little known comic that was written in like 1991 about a guy who's like given superpowers by an alien race and goes and like basically fights in their army for a while, then comes home with these superpowers, and everyone's like, "You jerk! You just abandoned everybody for 10 years." Or I don't know if it was 10 years in that comic, but it was a really good comic. It was published by DC, but it wasn't part of the DC universe. And that was another big influence, which is one of the reasons he's named the Griffin. I'm not gonna complain about it. Yeah. So I tried to get those elements in there. Yeah, he has mystery to him.
Yeah, but
he's a reliable narrator, and I'm always like, because he says something doesn't mean it's true. And people will talk to me about that. I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, just because he says something, he lies. You know. I like to add that little element to everything.
Well, and he works hard to, protect what he has.
Yeah.
Right. He's got that past, like you said, and he tries to start a new life somewhere different in Wistful Ascending, and he ends up, making friends, and he's just trying to protect, the new life he has, the new basically family that he ends up making. And it's just to me that part was I loved it. I loved all the friendships he makes from it,
Yeah.
and how that motivates him to also be a better person.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big thrust for me was, you look at like people talk about writing and like your hero has to want something. He has to want to accomplish something. I'm like, what if he just wants to have like a normal life? Like, and you'll see people say like, you really can't have a hero where that's all they want, because then they're just reacting to stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to write a story about a guy who really just wants a place where he can get coffee that's good and like a nice plate of eggs and like have his friends around and like, have laughs. So I threw that into stuff, and those scenes are trying to be his payoff, right? Those scenes in Wistful Ascending where he's sitting around the table, like drinking and laughing with his friends, people resonate with that. But I was just like, this is what he's fighting for. He's not trying to save the world. He's trying to like preserve these moments of happiness that he's, I think that most of us can resonate with. Most of us want that stuff. Most of us, what are your best times in your life? You're sitting around a table and having a drink and laughing with old friends or family. This is what we love. These are my best times. So I don't save the world.
Yeah, and like speaking of like just like having him like enjoy time, I kind of want to ask, because I don't know if I've ever seen anybody ask you, where did Wei Li? Is it Wei Li?
The security chief.
Yeah, the security chief. Where does she come from, and how did you come up with her? Because her dynamic with Rohan is fantastic.
Well, she's named after the UFC. I forget the name of the weight class, the 115-pound champion, Wei Li Zhang. So that's where I got the name from, because I'm a huge fan of her as a fighter, which is totally meaningless for anything. And then as a personality, she's just another aspect. This is how I treat people. This bitter, biting sarcasm. Wei Li's like the author insertion. Like Rohan, stop being a jerk. This is just me talking to my character. I think.
I love that. So basically, you kind of sneakily just inserted yourself into the story.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, Rohan is an aspect of my personality, but Wei Li is a much probably even bigger aspect of my personality, for better or for worse. And then I love the fact that, so I think in fiction, we often see empaths, people who have like, can sense other people's emotions as being like very kind, counsel-like and gentle. And I'm like, well, what if you sense everyone's emotions? You just realize everyone's kind of a jerk, but all people are sort of equally jerks, and you're just going to like fine and just be very like harsh about it. And to me, that was like Wei Li. So Wei Li's like my answer to Counselor Troy from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I was just gonna say.
It's not gonna coddle everyone. She's more like, yeah, you feel sad. You know what? Everyone else feels sad. Trust me. I know. I can sense it. You're not special. Get a hold of yourself and buck up and do your thing. Right?
That's kind of comparison that I'm kind of glad to hear, because even though I didn't think of it, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah.
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 Yeah. Far better counselor.
And then I needed her to be the martial arts trainer, because there's a part of me that wants to make this into like a progression fantasy story, because I have to have him power up, because I'm a huge like Dragon Ball Z fan. So I have to put people in there who can like train him and where he can progress, but I can't do it too fast because he's already so potent. You don't want to just have him go too quickly.
Well, and
it's got to be very gradual.
One of the things that I think you've done well is you've added a slight cap of the anger barrier, where like he gets more powerful, but he gets more irrational as that happens. And so, yes, he can just get insanely powerful, but his effectiveness goes down unless you just kind of point him and then fire him at like a target.
That's a great way to handle like it's always interesting to try to handle like the Superman problem, right? Where you have the character's too powerful. Superman has kryptonite. I was a big fan of there's a comic called Spawn. I'm not saying it's a great comic, but like character had like basically infinite power, but he had a certain number of like points like that he could use, and once he'd used up his power, he was going to like go to hell or die, or I forget the details. But like it was great because you could tell like a huge high-powered story where he was spending his power because he needed to save the world. But most of the time you could tell like a Batman type story because he didn't want to spend all that power, right? Because he only had so you're putting this limitation on, but you can still tell both kinds of stories. So Rohan's always going to try to like solve problems in a Batman way. He doesn't want to go like punching things, because if he goes punching things, there's a chance he'll lose it and kill everyone around him. And that sucks because they're the people who make his coffee and are his friends, you know? So like there's always that risk, which we see in the first book and other places.
So one thing I always like to ask authors is like, what's your writing process kind of look like on a day-to-day? What's your outline, pantser? Like just go hard.
Look, no one's really fully outlined, right? No, I don't think anyone sits down with an outline where that outline is every element that goes in the book is pre-planned. You can't. I don't think you can do that. And I don't know if anyone really like fully pants a book and then publishes it, right? You pants it and then you go back and you insert like the foreshadowing, and it's just a continuum. And I'm the same way, right? But I have to plan a lot. If I don't have a really solid handle on the whole plot, I can't write the first chapter won't work. Like my first draft has to be really highly planned, and it has to be really like, I wish. Rohan's a lot of me, but yeah, not exactly. But if I just write a first chapter, I don't really know where it's going. It's junk. I have lots of properties in my trunk pile of terrible books where I just said, oh, let me just write the first chapter and see where it takes me. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't take me anywhere good. I have to know where I'm going. So I do that, and then how I actually write really varies from book to book, and based on how my work life is going, because I have a day job, sadly. No, my day job is great, but it takes up a lot of time. So, but I definitely have lots of Google Docs with like detailed notes. Like right now, I'm working out the details for like the secondary plot line for the next book, which I thought I had, but I realized I didn't. So I'm really trying to hammer it out but I'm going to have that hammered out before I write chapter 1.
Right. And so for the trilogy that you've written, or the 3 that you've written so far, you have a theme of doing the prologue that kind of gives you a little snippet of later on in the book. Are you going to keep doing that theme throughout?
I don't think I will.
Okay.
I've gotten a lot of complaints about that structure. People like, because if anyone watching hasn't read the books, okay, the prologue is always like basically kind of like the beginning of the third act. So, or the beginning of the end, the beginning of the final like action sequence. and people get really annoyed about that. There are people who like it, but then in the first book, I thought it really served a good purpose because it sets up right away kind of like the stakes and the powers. It sets up the genre. It's like super people or fighting on a moon, right? You get right away. It tells you so much about what the story is like, and that's important when you're writing a book. But if you're reading book 4, presumably you've got all that already. I don't need to convince you that there's going to be action in this because you've read 3 books, so there's plenty of action. So I don't think I need to like prove to you that it's going to be an action story by putting action on the first page in book 4.
Right.
And I've had a lot of people complain about that structure. So I think I'm going to junk it, but I haven't fully decided yet. But that's my current plan, is to try to do without and try to adopt a more traditional, like linear. My books are pretty linear. Like other than that prologue, everything else is just, straight through. So I think that's what I'm going to do for book 4.
Okay.
I have to come up with something because it's a huge restraint. It's a huge restriction on the structure, right? Because you've got to be able to write that first 1,500 words, but you can't give too much away so that the person reading goes, well, now I know where this is leading. You got to be a surprise.
Right.
It's tricky, and I think I worked it for the first 3, but I have to work it for every book. I already have so many restrictions I put on myself when I write these. Like I want to try to have them all the same length, which is like crazy.
Oh, yeah. So what are some of the other restrictions that you put on yourself? Because you've got, like you said, the length, but are there any that are maybe harder or that are easier to do for you?
There's a lot, right? Because I'm a very cranky, cantankerous kind of person myself, right? So like I told you, like these little internal inconsistencies, like, in Harry Potter, why don't they use this power they discovered before to solve this new problem, right? That kind of stuff drives me crazy. So I really try not to let that sneak into the books. So I try to if someone has a power that could be used in this situation, they're going to be using it, or there better be a really good reason they're not, So anytime I introduce like a character, I have to realize, okay, could we have used them to solve a problem from a previous book? Because if we could have, then why didn't we call them in book 1 to say, hey, help us solve this problem with your superpower? So you've got to be very internally consistent, and that's always tricky. And then I hate coincidences. I don't want a storyline like where, 2 coincidental things that are unconnected are blending together too much. If you look at Wistful Ascending, everything leads from this one precipitating event, right? The Ursans come in chapter 1, there's a wormhole opens and these refugees come in. Everything stems from there, right? Every element of the thing whether directly or indirectly, comes from that. If I had also Rohan's old enemy catches up with him in book 20, in chapter 20, why in that same 2-week period would these 2 unrelated things have happened, right? That stuff drives me crazy when I read it in someone else's book, so I have to try really hard not to do it in my own, and that's a big constraint. You just have to, it would be nice if what if these things just happen, or if some situations happen, to resolve this conflict that's been there for 1,000 years. Well, why did they happen in the previous 1,000 years? That stuff drives me crazy. Why are we suddenly fixing this age-old conflict or this age-old tension? After that, what's special about this guy or this person, or this situation? So I have to try to make sure that I'm sort of immune or armored against those sort of criticisms, because they drive me nuts. Oh, there we go.
Hi, little guy.
Hello.
Sorry.
No, please don't.
Don't. No, it's good.
I had to run because he got sick.
Oh, jeez. I've got 2 or 4 of my own, so depending on how you count them.
Depending on how you count them, one's half a person, the others.
I have 2 from my first marriage, and my wife has 2 from. So
and then you got 4.
Yeah,
I've got 4.
You got 4.
But hers are older. So I can't hold them like that anymore. So which is fine. It's a different age. So yeah.
So I heard from a little bird that there might be an upcoming little project from Sir Joe JCM Berne.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can share that this little bird told me that you might be willing to share?
I'll share anything. So I got bounced out of Spiffbo in round one. A science, self-published fantasy blog off. Oh, I forgot, almost forgot, right? And I got eliminated in the first round. I was feeling very sorry for myself. And then I had this streak where a bunch of people were like, oh, I would read your book, but I'm not really into superheroes. I'm more of a fantasy guy. And I'm like, well, fine. I'm just going to write a fantasy novel and prove to you all that I can do it. So I tried. So I wrote a fantasy novel. I say I hate wrote it, but so it's so I don't have a working title yet. I've been calling it Millennium Ichi. I've been calling it Angry. My joking title is Angry Wuja Mom, which is not never going to be the real title. So it's the story.
That has to be the real title.
Yeah.
So it's imagine the movie Taken, except the main character is played by Michelle Yeoh instead of Liam Neeson, and the whole thing is set on Cradle. So it's that setting, and the main character is a former monster hunter, and her twin daughters are kidnapped because they want this incredibly powerful relic that she has, a weapon. She's long retired from the martial world. They kidnap her daughters, and she's like, I'm not going to give you the weapon, but I will come get my daughters back regardless of what it takes. And she basically like wreaks havoc across a continent to get them back. And there's a dog, Angry Martial Arts Mom. There's a dog who's I love. I never did an animal companion before, so I had to put a dog in there. And there's a lot of humor. And I call out Petrick. What's the word? Tuckerize him? Where you take a character and you name them after someone who's a real person, and then you kill them.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh.
Yeah, he gets that done to him all the time.
Yeah,
I think that's happened to Kendrick at least twice now.
Yeah, he keeps talking about it. So her deceased husband is named Petrick, which I don't know. I don't know if any of this is going to make it into the final version, but it's a shorter work. It's only peripherally related to the hybrid helix, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with it. I don't know if I'm going to publish it. I don't know if I'm going to try to query it for a year. I'm like very tempted, but it's a weird book. There's a lot of weird stuff.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's very like over the top kung fu, like high magic martial arts stuff. Like everyone who does a technique, they call out the name of the technique as they execute it. So she'll say the name of the thing. It doesn't work for everybody. I've had a couple people already be like, kind of takes me out of things. I'm like, dude, when you watch old movies, that's what they do. So I don't know. It was a fun ride. I needed a break from. I was feeling a lot of pressure after Spiffbo and after for the next hybrid helix book. And this was just a completely separate thing. So it's written. I need to do some editing, and then I got to figure out what to do with it. It's been a lot of stress trying to figure out. I mean, a little part of me wants to query it, but a little part of me doesn't think it's worth it. And I might just try to get a cover on there and edit it and get it into. And just publish it myself, because that's what I know how to do. I don't know how to query. I've been self-pub since 2020. I don't really think about like, oh, how do you find an agent? Like I haven't thought about that in 2 years. So.
That's true. What's the self-pub process been like for you? Like figuring out the ins and outs and reaching out to reviewers and finding other authors to talk to. Like what's that entire experience been like for you?
I really got nowhere for a long time, and then I got everywhere in a hurry. Discord's been huge for finding other people who know what they're doing. I found that very accidentally, like in 2022, like in the summer, like before June of 2022. I didn't know anybody. I had no reviews, and then I got there in a rush after Spiffbo, and it's all because of Miggins. I don't know if you know. I think you know Miggins. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
I know Miggins.
I entered Spiffbo, and then I was like, well, who's interested in the Spiffbo? Because you don't have to win Spiffbo, but Spiffbo it makes people aware of your book because you're on lists, and people are like, oh, I want to see all the Spiffbo books, and they publish the list and they think about all of them. So hey Eddie, so I offered the book on Twitter, and Megan's like, oh, I'll take it, and then Jordan Buxton said, well, if Megan's will read it, I'll read it too. And then Jordan read it, and Jordan got Andrew, got you to read it. And then you read it and got Kay to read it and a whole bunch of other people, and then it escalated from there. So that's how come people have read the books. That's exactly how it all works. And Megan's didn't actually read the book until like January of this year, which is hilarious. because he got the whole ball rolling for me. And then he actually read it recently, and he liked it enough, but he didn't love it, which was fine. But it was just very funny that's how the whole thing panned out. So I highly recommend anyone who wants to publish, get on like India Chords or something on Discord and talk to those people, because there's a wealth of knowledge there that it's just so hard to figure out on your own. But I was deliberately waiting until I had 3 books out, before I could do things like run Amazon ads, or really, because I mean, the whole idea, if I can get someone interested in the books now, they can buy 3 books. If I'd done the same thing a year ago, they could have bought 1. And that's just, just financially, it just makes a big difference. So.
Well, and from the financial aspect, you currently hire one of the best cover artists in the game.
I don't recommend doing that. It was so. I love my covers. I love Chris. He's fantastic. I literally was sitting there going, "Oh, I need a cover," and I looked behind me on my shelf. What's good? Oh, I like the Dresden books. Who painted these? And I looked him up, and he's the only person I didn't like comparison shop. I didn't see who else was available. No, I'm like, "Oh, Chris, can you do a cover?" Yeah. So he does fantastic work. He's doing my cover for book 4, and he's been great. And that was a total. I didn't think he would say yes, honestly, when I messaged him, but when he did, I was like, well, now I have to. So I got a really good narrator for book 1, but all this stuff's just a huge expense. So you're putting in all this money, and at a certain point, I can't tell my daughter, can't pay for college next year because I have to buy a cover and get a narrator for book 4 or book 2. So maybe think about community college. That's not going to fly in my household. So right now I'm trying to see how many books I can sell and whether I can feed the beast. But there's always a question. If you get if you compare a $1,000 cover to like a $4,000 cover, is the $4,000 cover going to sell $3,000 worth of books over the $1,000 cover? It depends. if you have if you're a major publisher, it does. But then that's showing up on a lot of ads that you already have access to. It's going on a lot of shelves in bookstores. If you're a person like me, it may not. So, yeah, very expensive. Not a joke. So, but I love them. Part of me is just I can't ever regret them because I see them on the shelf and I'm just like, oh, my babies.
Well, I mean, that's something that, you've worked for and you put your blood, sweat, and tears in, and hours of just back cranking writing and just editing. I've loved everything about Wistful Ascending since I first picked it up.
Thank you.
Same.
So kind. Yeah.
I would love to know, with all these expenses that is involved with self-publishing and all of the recent success that authors have seen with Kickstarter, is that something you've looked into, something you'd consider for books moving forward?
I have not really, but I might. The whole point of a Kickstarter is it's only going to work if you've got 1,000 or whatever people who are going to pitch in for the Kickstarter, and I might have that now. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it a ton. If I could sell enough books to make the money back, I could front load. Like I could put the money up front, and if I could make it back on sales, that'd be fine. I have the resources to do that. So I don't know that a Kickstarter is really what I need, because Kickstarter is really just you're getting the money up front, so you can pay for everything. I can foot the bill up front if I'm going to get it back at the end. It's getting it back at the end that's the tricky part. I really want audio, and I didn't really think about this enough. Like Andrew, you were on a live stream for Matt on Books' 1,000 subscribers with Raf Blue Text, and I didn't think about it. I'm ashamed I didn't think about it. But with audio, it's not just about like what people prefer to consume, but it's an accessibility issue. He's blind. He can't. If I don't get an audio done of Return of the Griffin, Raf's not reading it. So I'd really like to get audios done, but they're not paying for themselves. So.
That's initially where audio came from. Is it was a tool for those who couldn't read it physically.
I will suggest to any authors out there that having audio is a great marketing tool, because a lot of reviewers who are not disabled still prefer audio. Like there are people who will take my audio and read it and review it. They were like, if you were a physical copy, I might have gone to it in a year, but I might not have.
Yeah.
Right? So I get that. I miss those days. I can't.
Well,
Sorry, I'm trying to jungle gym dad here.
Yeah, my son's 15. I can't do that anymore.
I mean, you could try.
I could try. I'm not strong enough. I think he would struggle. Yeah, I would really.
Yeah, I know a lot of readers who just only consume audio.
People ask me regularly, when's audio Return of the Griffin coming out? And I'm like, I wish I could. I mean, I happen to be in a weird personal financial position that nobody should care about. But I'm a little strapped for cash this year. So right now, I have to say, I don't know. Maybe later this year I can. I mean, I love my narrator. He does it. You know, it's worth it in the sense that my narrator does a fantastic job. He deserves to get paid for his time. In that sense, it's worth it. In the sense that, do I sell enough audiobooks to cover that cost? It's not. You know, there's two different ways of looking at it. So,
well, I do know that I'm starting to see Kickstarters cover audiobook costs.
Yeah.
But if I could find 1,000 people who wanted the audio, who would buy the audio for Fistful of Sending, I could just sell them 1,000 copies of that, and I could use that to pay for the audio for the second book. Right? So it's like, yeah. It's fine. It's all good. No, I'm fine.
There's no rush on it.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know for like even for myself, audiobooks, I'll do immersion reading. So I'll read with the physical copy and the audio, and for me that actually helps with retention.
I believe it.
And like not losing my focus on who punched who? Where?
I've never done that. I don't really listen to audiobooks. I have a couple that I need to check out, but I haven't gotten there yet. I still read. I'm a big Kindle guy. My Kindle's not next to me, but I read a lot of Kindle. I'm more accessible. Yeah. So I need to get that audio for Raph, if nobody else, at least for Raph and some other people.
You could do what Andrew D. Meredith does. He's author of Deathless Beasts, and he does his own audiobooks.
He does his own audiobooks.
Yeah.
I don't think I could. I mean, he's got stage training. I think this is like doing your own covers. You know, I feel like people think, oh yeah, I could do my own cover. And then you try and you realize, no, you actually, not everyone has the talent to manage all that and have it. Like A.R. Witham did his own audio, and that's fantastic from everything I've heard. So yeah, maybe I'll do a Kickstarter one of these days. I have a lot of things I want to do. I started a YouTube channel. What do I know? I'm a procrastinator.
Maybe we can jump into that. Can you talk about your experience jumping into YouTube from being an author?
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I've always been like a blogger. I like to blog about stuff about books. Like, oh, thank you, Adrian. I would blog about definition. You know, I'd see someone saying something about how, fantasy and science fiction are really the same. And I'm like, no, they're not. Let me explain the difference. Give me 5 minutes, and I would write a blog post about it. People don't read my blog. People don't read blogs in general. I think it's really hard because they're not. Thank you. Because blogs aren't consolidated in the same way that like YouTube is. You can go to YouTube and you can see videos from all these different people. So I was like, well, if people aren't reading the blog, maybe I'll just make a little video with the same content and throw it up there. So the blog is really the YouTube channel is really sort of just me blogging about stuff. I want to say it's a vlog, but I don't know if that's really accurate. I don't know if that's how that term really works. Thank you, Leslie. So yeah, so far I've been making videos about things like hard versus soft science fiction, science fiction versus fantasy. I like these genre distinctions because people sometimes it helps you write and also helps you sort of understand what you like and don't like about something you're reading. And to me, that's just useful. As a critical person, and it's useful helping me understand what I'm trying to accomplish very specifically. So I don't really plan to review. I don't think I'm going to be reviewing any books. People have asked me to go over some of the old media that motivated me. Properties that I grew up on, and I might do that, but I'm not going to be reviewing like currently published indie books because they're all written by my friends, and I can just gush about every book, but that's kind of pointless. And I'm not going to say anything critical about any of my friends' books, even though I might be thinking it. Hey, Nico.
Nico's good people.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, I mean, you can definitely review your friends' books. I do it all the time.
Yep.
Mainly because I'm just a chatterbox and I try and befriend everybody. And so by the time I get around to reading your book, we've had many discussions.
Yeah. I don't think I have it in me. Maybe one day. But I wouldn't mind talking about some of the stuff that I read when I was a kid. Because those people who wrote that stuff, they're all really old. They're not watching YouTube. They don't know how to work the computer anymore.
I mean, hey, Janny Wirtz can work a computer really well.
Yeah, I read some of her stuff a long time ago. It's been a long time, but I'm thinking like Jim Starlin comics from the 70s.
Oh, okay.
Someone was asking me to do like an unboxing, but instead of a box of new stuff that's been shipped to me, do unboxing from my closet of books that I packed up 25 years ago, and I could open it and say, "Oh, yeah, this one was about what so and so." I might do that because I don't see a lot of that being done, but we'll see.
So you're still growing with it. You're gonna try different things, it sounds like, and just chat about what you love.
Yeah,
that's really what YouTubing is.
That's what everything I do, because one of my YouTube things is about writing to market. Like I'm not looking at what do people want, and I'll make a YouTube video about what people want to see. I'm just going to talk about what I want to talk about, and if people like it, then great, and if they don't have to subscribe. So it's kind of the backwards coming at it from the back end, or going backwards.
I wouldn't really say that's backwards. That's kind of how you start, and then you find the audience that likes that niche, right? Like what you're doing.
And it'd be great if a whole bunch of people wanted to hear me talk about hard and soft magic systems. But if they don't, that's fine. I'll have my 57 subscribers and I'll be fine. I didn't invest a lot of money in this whole process. It's amazing how much you can do for almost for free. Oh, good. Thank you, Les. That's fantastic.
So I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't ask where the Space Bears came from.
They were like an accident. So
you don't accidentally create the most amazing alien race in existence, sir. They are space bears. Bears in space, and they are fantastic.
People talk about the bears a lot. And in those terms, everyone seems to either not mention them or love them. I don't know. And I wish I could claim that I had a plan. But really, I was motivated by there's a lot of old science fiction manga and anime where many of the characters are anthropomorphized animals for no reason. Like some character will just have a wolf's head, another guy will be like a bear's head, and there's no explanation where they came from. Are they different race? Are they bioengineered? It's just like no one notices. Someone will have like cat ears, big thing in old like 80s anime and manga of cat ears. Why? I have no idea. Not explained. And there was one image I had in my head from, I think it was Outlanders, of someone with a bear head, like making this like expression of shock, and like drool was hanging down. And it stuck in my head for 30 years or 40 years, no, 30, 35 years. And when I thought about, what's going to happen when there's a guy flying outside your ship going, hello, like, what if they were bears? And that was it. And then I gave them terrible Russian accents because they're bears. They had to have bad Russian accents. All their dialogue is based on this one guy from the show Arrow. Remember the CW show? And he had this one like frenemy throughout the series. It was like this Russian.
Talking about Deadshot?
No, he wasn't like another hero.
Deathstroke.
No, it wasn't Deathstroke. It was like a regular guy. He didn't have a costume. He was just like the Russian mafia dude who just kept showing up here and there. And so
I know what you're talking about.
Whenever I write the dialogue, I had that guy's voice in my head, and I'm like, how did he talk? And I try to get that down. So yeah, the Space Bears. And my point.
That's the one thing I remember from my review is just going, guys, it's got Space Bears.
Yeah. And I didn't mean for them to show up ever again. They showed up in like chapter 1 and 2, and then I thought they'd be done. And then I kept finding places to stick them. They are smarter than the average bear. And I kept sticking them in other places, and then I put them in the second book and in the third book. So now I have to have them in every book. That's a funny part about a series.
Just work. Some of my favorite characters are the Space Bears. I love the culture that they have. It's this kind of like, lead by strength type of deal, which is hilarious when you're considering Rohan.
Yeah. There was the one part of Wistful Study that an editor made me cut out, and I had a subplot where the Ursons decided that he would be a good husband, and it's canonical that in Urson culture the women choose the husbands. The husbands have no say in it; they just have to go along with whatever the women decide. And there was a wrestling tournament set up because a number of the females had decided Rohan should be their husband, and they were going to have a tournament to decide who was going to mate with him. And he was like trying to explain that this isn't going to work. Like I'm literally can't have children biologically because that's the whole premise of the story. And then all the Ursons like, oh, I know you're nervous, but it'll be fine. You'll do fine. And he's like, no, I'm not nervous. I'm trying to explain, and I had to cut it out. And my editor made me cut. It was really better off removed. But I will always.
You should do like a newsletter release of that, like as a short story. Just polish it up and give it to like people who subscribe to your newsletter because I think that sounds hilarious.
It was amusing to me, at least, to write that. But my editor was like, enough of the bears, and I'm like, yeah, this was too much.
Yeah, Tori kind of segues into something that I want to talk about, which is Wistful. Like the sentient spaceship. Like I know that there's like when I think of sentient, like I just got bit. When I think of sentient sci-fi, what comes to mind is Farscape and a few other things. But where did Wistful originate from?
You know, I didn't really think. I loved Farscape and I loved Moya.
And, yes, that's the name I was trying to remember.
I mean, Moya in Farscape doesn't have her own voice. She speaks through the navigator, but you can tell her personality because I'm going to say Moya feels this, Moya says this. And I definitely use Moya's shape is very reminiscent of the shape of a lot of the ships in the hybrid Helix. But I just had this idea that there's, an artificial intelligence that's been there for 10,000 years. And what would she be like? And she would have a different perspective on everything because people, like when you live for 10,000 years, like, yeah, I'd be sad if you died, but you're going to die in a little while anyway. So I'm going to be sort of chill about everything. And then, I don't know. I think a lot of it just grew. Where would a place where Rohan would be happy? What would that look like? And then a little of it is just utopianism, like where would I want to live? What would be a cool place to hang out? Well, it's a sentient spaceship. And then there's a reason that she needs to be a sentient spaceship in terms of the way the magic system works and the way you'll find out. You find out a little more in Blood Reunion even about that. I don't want to give too many spoilers because it's meant to be really, you're meant to reveal the metaphysics and all that in dribbles. I don't, that's how the story is all structured. But yeah, Moya was an influence. And then I'm a huge fan of like Murderbot. And not everyone loves Murderbot, but I really love Murderbot, and I
haven't read them yet.
And I really like Murderbot, and I really like Anne Leckie's Ancillary Justice. I think it's the first one. I know people have heard of this. These are popular books. I don't
have that one. I started reaching for my Megan O'Keefe books and realized that was wrong.
Oh yeah. Ancillary Justice I love. And a lot of it is, what they're trying to say is like, okay, so you have this like artificial intelligence, a battleship. It's not going to have the same concerns and ways of thinking about things as a person would. They're not thinking about like relationships. They can have relationships. They don't have a body. They're not looking to get married. That doesn't happen. They have a very different perspective on everything, and that influences all their thought processes. So I tried to pull that in and pull through, and then then try to give allude to this backstory. You have this sense. You're trying to give this sense that Wistful's old and has seen a lot, without having her tell you, "Oh, I've seen a lot. Let me list the things I've seen," because no one wants to read that, right? So you've got to kind of hint at it without dumping it. And to me, that's the whole point of like a story like this. Like the whole point of the storytelling is you allude to all these things without dumping them, because I hate info dumps. And there's not too many in these books. I mean, there are some, but not too many.
But I think you pull that off really well because, like you said, you drop the hint and you pace it out in such a way that keeps the reader engaged and wanting to know that mystery and what's going on before any kind of reveal. And I think that pacing is just spot on.
That was my main goal, was to try to drive a story where you're You're more driven to turn the page by wondering what's happening next, as opposed to being super worried because our heroes are in deep trouble. Because that's typically how books are structured. Oh my God, they're all going to die. How do they not die? And you turn the page to see how they. I mean, let's diversify. Let's have. I'm going to turn the page. I just want to find out what these bears are drinking. I want to turn the page because I want to see what's going on with you. Anita's not running a daycare center as her day job. I can tell right now.
Anita runs on chaos.
She's always stirring up trouble in all these live streams.
I tried. He wouldn't latch on. He wasn't interested.
Yeah.
Sorry. So with that pacing too, something I really appreciate is that you also managed to mix in the action with all that hinting and character development. You touch on smaller things that turn into bigger aspects of Rohan and the developments that he gets later on. And I'm always surprised every time I've picked up one of these books that you don't fail to do that. And
next book, maybe failures to come. I hope not.
But there's always, humanity. There's so many aspects to us, right?
That's what makes it really hard, right? And that's why this other thing I just did is a much simpler, more straightforward book. There's not a lot of character development. There's a lot of violence, and it's much simpler. But when I write the hybrid Helix books, I think of it like solving a simultaneous equation in math. You've got to have this thing. It's got to have the right pacing. It's got to have action every so often. It's got to have character development for all these different people. And you've got to find a way to structure a list of scenes that hits all those things. It's really hard. Blood Reunion was really hard to write. Sweat and tears went into that book because every scene I had to see, how can I do this? And, you can't just have relentless action. People can pull that off. I don't think I can pull that off. It's hard, right? And that was never my intent, to have relentless action. There's a fight in every chapter, right? I couldn't do that. That's a different kind of book, I think. And then to have the character development pace and to have Rohan make mistakes, but different mistakes in every book. That was, for me, different moral dilemmas in every book. To me, that was really tricky because it's so easy to have this. You can imagine I could have written Wistful Ascending 3 times. Had a slightly different thing come through another wormhole. I could have had him lose his temper at a different place. I could have written a very sort of similarly structured book with some different characters in every, over and over again. But I'd be bored. I think the readers would be more bored. Some people would probably like it more, that's always the thing. Oh, I like this book the first time. I'm going to read it. People like repetition on some level, but it wasn't what I was trying to accomplish. So I didn't do it, for better or for worse, because not everyone appreciates some of the changes. That's always that's the tricky part. You can either write the same book over and over again, or you can write a different book and potentially turn off people who like that first one. So that's always the tricky part with a series.
So one of the things that I wanted to kind of ask is, I got a couple more questions here. So you started alluding to a lot of deeper history within the series. How far are you going to take that? Do you have plans? Because Blood Reunion really changes the game. And I know we're keeping it non-spoiler, but you introduce a lot of concepts. Anita wants the baby back. Give me a second. Let me finish speaking. I'll let him talk, and then I'll go get the baby. Back by popular demand. So I just kind of want to know kind of your thoughts on exploring this universe, because you kind of explored Rowan in the first 2 books, and then all of a sudden we start exploring a lot of deep lore and history.
I love that stuff, right? I love this. And then 100,000 years ago, this happened, and that's what led to this where we are now. I love that in books. I love reading about that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to throw that in there. And then I always like the idea that, well, if there are humans and we can do magic, why weren't there something else before? And this whole stuff that happens in the second book about Atlantis and the other. I can't remember the name of my own made-up city that is paired with them. But in Return of the Griffin, I think I accidentally had this thing where, what if magic using octopuses could open wormholes between oceans from different worlds? And then once you can do that, you can imagine octopuses. Basically all the planets in the galaxy are connected. It's one continuous ocean with wormholes between them, one biome. And to an octopus living in this ocean, it's like the world is a giant ocean, and kind of above it, there's an atmosphere and then space, but that's not the important part. It's really just this vast. And I was like, I fell in love with that idea. And then where are those octopuses now? What happened to them? We'll find out.
I'm terrified to figure out where they are.
But we'll find out. We'll find out everything.
This isn't Nico's fault, by the way. He was calming in the other room.
Way more important, feed a baby than anything we're talking about.
No, I'm having a great time.
So am I. But
the multitasking is real.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to find out all the details. The things between the stars. I'll tell you what they are. We'll figure out what their problem is and why they're between the stars, and hopefully we'll find some resolution to them being there and problems that cause. Wormholes between oceans. Yeah, Nico, read the book, man. I think I sent you one.
I've been telling Nico to read this book for months. So, Nico, in fact, when you come here in a couple weeks, we already have planned to do audio booking and puzzles. So just listen to Wistful.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Problem.
There are no magic octopuses in the first book. I don't even know if they're hinted at. They're definitely hinted at in book 2, and they're definitely hinted at even more in book 3. But I have to have the overarching. I have plans. I don't want to give away too much, but you will. But if I allude to something, unless I get hit by a truck before finishing, I promise I will let you know what that thing is and why it's there. Right? This is not lost, right? Because that stuff drives me crazy when there's like this mystery that's alluded to in like a show or a property, and then they never get back to it. Oh, we never really had an explanation for you guys watch Lost? You know what I'm talking about? The show. And they're like these mysteries that the writers admitted they never had a plan. They didn't ever mean anything. They were just things that were making you feel like there was a mystery to solve, and it wasn't. That is not me. So if I'm alluding to something hidden between the stars, you're going to find out what that is. I don't know exactly when, but you're going to get there, and I will tell you. And whether that's satisfying or not, we'll see. But I promise it's going to be there. So
okay. So do you keep like a running list of hanging plot threads that you still need to address? And
no.
so just so you don't forget?
I really should. No, I really should. That'd be great, right?
We're gonna cut back in 10 years. We're gonna cut back to this clip.
Yeah.
Never forget. You're gonna be like, yo, what about, did you just lick me, sir?
Never explained the script. No, most of it's in my head. I have Google Docs full of stuff. It's not as organized as it should be, and I'm sure at some point I'm going to really regret all that. I spent a lot of time searching old books. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of Kindle reads lately. I'm on KU. Anyone watching? I'm on KU. I'll read it on Kindle Unlimited.
Can I do it?
But everything's so connected. Like you don't necessarily know it's connected, but like you've got there's implied diversity, right? So like there are all these humanoid races, and they're all like have different color skin and maybe a couple different features like antenna or something, but they're all related and they're all basically put there the same way. Like it's not that hard to figure out like all the details, so or keep them all straight. So, we'll see.
I'm kind of surprised considering that you had talked about earlier that you're very particular about specific things that you do not want to do in your books, and yet you're not keeping track.
I'm probably, I might be a little arrogant that way, that I think I can keep it all in my head, and one day I'll be proven wrong. There are definitely a couple things that I stuck in there like on a whim that I'm like, wait, I'm gonna have to account for this later. Oh my, it's gonna bite me one day, or I'm gonna say, how can I fit these trans-dimensional short order cook into the greater picture of the species in the universe and how they all interact? And I don't know how I'm gonna do that. I may just pretend that never happened.
Just retcon it.
But we shall see. So
can you share, as we approach on the hour of me wrestling children? This is not actually an author interview. This is me just watching me wrestle my 2 children.
That's fantastic. I'll watch this every weekend.
Yeah.
Can you tell us any like hints, teasers for book number 4?
but I have a title. I'm so happy. Shadow of Hyperion, and
there seems to be a small mystery, in my opinion, with a character by that name.
Sam.
Because you have, for the last 3 books, always skirt the issue.
I don't skirt the issue. He's dead. Rohan said, "I'm
there. I don't believe you.
You really should. I do not. So Shadow of Hyperion, and what can I tell you about the book? I have it plotted mostly. I am having a really hard time with one of the plot lines, but I'll figure it out. It's going to be Rohan and some some excitement. We're going to see ramifications of Wistful's relationship with the Empire, which is, now they've had open conflict in book 3, so that's going to have ramifications. There should be some giant dinosaurs to fight, and
that will get Nico to read something instantly.
Yeah, there should be no sharks in this one, but we should have some dinosaur punching. I like to think of all my books as we can summarize the plot line as man punching X, man punching bears, man punching sharks, man punching vampires, and we'll have man punching dinosaurs in book 4.
See, now you're going to force Nico to read all 3. You're going to have to do a book review for each individual book.
There will be some dinosaur punching. Well, actually, there's a lot of dinosaur punching in Angry Wuja Mom, because
is there?
Angry Wuja Mom is fighting a lot of very large dinosaurs with Wuja on her way to finding her twin children. So, is there a connection between the fact that there are dinosaurs in both books? Maybe there is. You'd have to read them and really pay attention to find out, or ask me.
Honestly, like there are. So with your current idea, I say go for it, because I'm seeing books that, now I haven't read these books, but the titles alone make me go, what? Like Battle Mage Farmer, Beware of Chicken. There are these books out there that they're getting thousands of reviews. It is an in thing right now. So that's why I say go for the crazy title.
Yeah. There's I might the working title right now. Andrew suggested Partial Function, which is the name of a move she makes, because all her fighting moves are named after mathematical functions. And if you actually draw the function and compare it to the move she makes, it actually makes sense, which I don't think anyone's doing, but that was my conceit for the book. So we'll see. Angry Wuja Mom. Yeah.
Oh. Bryce, don't bring up Chuck Tingle. You don't bring up Chuck Tingle live.
That'll be your son's first words, Chuck Tingle, and you'll be like, oh no, this isn't good.
He can mostly make his way through Dada.
Yeah.
And then I need to work on not swearing in front of children, because my daughter is starting to.
Oh, when my daughter was really small, I used to swear to her all the time in a very sing-song, loving tone. I won't replicate it here. And when she got to be about 6 months old, my ex-wife was like, at some point she's going to learn these words. I'm like, oh, I should stop. It was hard, because I would sing like lullabies, but with all the foul words in them. Little versions.
Yeah, there are some crazy book titles out there now.
I've seen. Yeah, I mean, there's always this tension, right? Do you want to try to write an isekai, or try to write a progression fantasy and cash in on that thing? And I kind of try
this one to pay for Wistful.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, I don't have the discipline. If I didn't have a day job, maybe I could sit down and cash in, or write a romance. That's my that's what I want. I want to write a Legends and Lattes side book to Return of the Griffin, where Kate, you read Return of the Griffin. I want Kid Lightning retires and opens up a coffee shop in Staten Island, and slowly falls in love with his speech therapist, who's trying to teach him how to speak again. Whole romantic novel where the only words he says are Kid Lightning.
Sold. I just want to see how that works.
I would honestly probably read that.
Yeah. I bet it'd be a hell of a lot of fun.
I don't know.
Take
What kind of page count are you looking at on that?
Yeah. Well, Angry Wuja Mom is shorter. It's only like 93,000 words. The other three are about 120,000. So I let myself. When I wrote it, I sort of said I don't care about any of the other. It's not a hybrid Helix book, so I can do whatever I want. So I just wrote it to whatever length it came out to, and if it hit 90,000, I was happy. And I don't need the same cover art. I can't afford the same cover artist, so I'm not going to worry about the cover artist. I don't have to have the same editor, So I just kind of,
just reach out to Sparrow.
Yeah, I should. I got a cover made.
Let's make sure Sparrow Springs is incredibly busy.
I know. That's the problem. Well, that's the problem, right? I mean, even if I had all the money in the world, I can't get Chris to make a cover for me anytime I want. I asked him to make a cover for book 4, months ago, and I might get it in April. But then, if I ask him for another one, I might get it in Christmas time. He's not gonna, I don't blame him. Don't get me wrong. This isn't criticism, right? He'll tell me things like, "Oh, I was going to do it, but I have to do the art that's going into the new Dune special releases." And I'm like, "All right, go do that." That means more. So he's a busy guy, and I know Sparrow's a really busy person too. I keep hearing Tiago and Tori fighting over her time on live streams.
Throws your name into the mix, sir.
Yes.
Toss it in there.
I should.
I know Andrew D. Meredith has used a couple elements of her art.
Yeah.
I mean, she is incredibly talented.
I'm still part of me still wants to query it, but then part of me really doesn't. So
now,
I'll struggle
by
with that.
query, what do you mean?
Try to find an agent and try to get a traditional publication deal. I would love to get Orbit or Tor to pick up Angry Wuja Mom and publish it. I think that would be fantastic for me. It would open doors that I don't have open to me right now. And if I publish it myself, some doors will open that aren't open now because it's a straight fantasy. I think it'll appeal to people who have not given Wistful a chance, and then ideally after reading it, they would then give Wistful a chance. That would be the dream, right? But if I could get an Orbit contract, that's a whole different story.
I heard if you get a tent and you camp out in their parking lot in front of the front door, and then just constantly hand people your manuscript, eventually they'll just give you a contract to get you to go away.
Is that what Travis Baldry did? Did he camp out? No, he's on Orbit's tour, but still, yeah, I don't know. It's tricky because, it's tricky for all the reasons that all the other self-published authors have been, talking about. The industry is very difficult, and
yeah, I mean, I'm happy that you are finally starting to find, exposure. Yeah. And people are reading these books because they are just so good.
Thank you, and it's thanks to you guys. You guys have been a huge. I can't even say, but
we couldn't promote it if you didn't write it.
Exactly.
I wrote it and watched it not go anywhere for a long time. So
sometimes all you got to do is be patient. I know I keep talking about other people during an author interview, but Andrew D. Meredith is a champion for self-pub, and he started a channel as well.
Yeah.
And he's starting to do these shorts on self-publishing and what it's like being an author, and stuff like that. Yeah, his shorts are fantastic.
Yeah.
But there is something about being patient, reaching out to reviewers, be confident in your work, JCM, because what you have is special and it is worth reading. I would highly recommend people who love fantasy, who love superheroes, who love sci-fi, who love space bears. I shouldn't have to say anything more than space bears, but they should pick up this series, which is why I am so happy that people are finally starting to do so.
People really are. It's been hugely gratifying. It's hugely gratifying, just to reach a number of people and an audience is just wonderful, and it's a great feeling. But it's also really great when people, review and they come out with a review and they point out the things that they appreciated. And you're like, that's what I was trying to say. And you read this and you got that this moral dilemma I was trying to present. It's an amazing connection. And it's amazing communication. Anita, I sent you a book, Anita. You have one. I'm not trying to rush it. No one owes me a read. I try not to give people a hard time by not reading the book. I'm like, no one owes me anything. But I do hope everyone reads it.
Oh, they should.
No, I love these books.
You guys are too kind. I love it. Thank you so much.
But Kayla, before we sign off, I'm going to do another plug, and then I'm going to let you do any other questions. So again, we do have JCM Berne here, author of Wistful Ascending, and hold on, I have baby on the hands. Return of the Griffin, and Blood Reunion. Blood Reunion is his favorite. He's hugging it right now. Don't eat it. And if you want to buy these books, you can click Silverstone Books in the description box down below to support not only JCM but an indie bookstore.
Absolutely.
I just love the like don't eat it, because I do that a lot with my own son. So it's a conversation I have at home too.
There's some saliva there, but no teeth marks. We're good.
So actually, one thing I wanted to ask, because you actually have a lot of Bollywood references throughout the books, and for me, I've actually never watched Bollywood. It's one of those things I've heard so much about. I don't watch a lot of TV or movies to begin with, so shame. But I did want to ask.
No shame. No shame. You don't have to watch anything.
I did want to ask though, for someone who, like myself, hasn't watched Bollywood movies before, what would be your 3 top picks or top recommendations? Because I know that these movies had quite a bit of influence in your books too. And I want to watch them so that I can appreciate the books more.
Yeah. So if you want like a really great action movie, RRR has been making the rounds. A lot of people are talking about it lately. RRR is really, really good. If you wanted something longer and more fantasy style, another action movie is Bahubali. They're not Bollywood. They're because India's big. Those are from the Tollywood, right? The Tamil Telugu Southern India movie industry, but it's similar but not the same aesthetic. If you want just like a romantic comedy, it's really hard. It's really hard not to go with like a Kal Ho Na Ho. Almost anything. If you find something with Shah Rukh Khan and like Kajol or Rani Mukherjee in it, they're just all tearjerkers and fabulous. Kal Ho Na Ho and I'm blanking on my other favorite. Happy New Year. Watch Shah Rukh Khan Happy New Year. Fantastic movie with Deepika Padukone. There's a lot. I'm not an expert, right? I mean, my knowledge of Bollywood is I've watched a lot of the stuff that's on Netflix, which is a tiny subset of like the Indian movie industry, like a tiny subset. I don't pretend to be like an expert, but I do love them, and that's why I made Rohan Indian. Because I was watching all these Bollywood movies, and I love the music, and I love the movies, and I love the clothes, and I love Indian food. My wife's family's from Bangladesh, so she doesn't watch the movies, but I do, and that was a big motivation. I made Rohan half Indian as sort of a shout out to the Indian film world. It's not really like it doesn't have a huge impact on the storyline, Him being a half alien child soldier with superpowers is a much bigger part of his identity than the fact that his mother's an immigrant from South Asia. But anyway, yeah. There's another film. It's going to really bug me now that I can't remember the name of the other movie I'm thinking of.
Well, if you remember it, let me know.
Yeah, you are in Discord. I know how to find you.
That's all right. I feel like so many of my questions are spoilers, so I can't go into a lot of those. But in the line of side characters that we see, are we going to at some point get a side story or anything with List?
We'll see her again. I don't know if it's a side story. I know List's background because List was one of the first characters I made in this universe. Because the first book I wrote with these characters was List, Amber, and Spiral on Earth. I wrote like 2 chapters of a book about them before I created Rohan, like years before. So List's backstory I have. List is my version of Doctor Who. Like there's a lot of story behind like all those scales and why they're all craggy, and why like what her role is in everything overall, like in terms of overseeing the Earth. And we'll definitely find out more. I don't really have plans for a side story. I'm actually thinking 25 books, Rohan's point of view, and that might be it. I mean, I kind of joke about this Kid Lightning role, cozy, you know, and I might write that at one point, but that's not really high on my list of things to really do. Like, I think it'd be fun, but you know, so we'll find out more about List at some point, but I don't know when. I haven't really planned that, but it's all in my, I mean, I know what it is. She has a very specific backstory. She's just fun because she'll say things like, you know, oh, my cousin is Godzilla and he's locked up in a cell underneath like a mountain somewhere. And I could let him out and he could solve these problems, but he'd wipe out all the humans while he does it. It's like a throwaway line in Return of the he's super happy. Like just this, you know, I could solve the problem, but there'd be consequences.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll take that because I am very curious to learn more about List and I guess more of her background and her role.
She's old. She's really old. And yeah. She's Doctor Who. She's protecting the Earth. But she can't be everywhere at once, so she can't do everything.
Hey, I love me some Doctor Who.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, sorry.
No, just one of my final questions that just popped into my head.
Go for it.
Truthfully, will Rohan ever find love?
Yeah. Yeah.
Will he ever get the girl?
I think Tamarylinth is going to show up in book 4. Again.
Don't tease me.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I'm not. She's going to be in book 4. That's good. That's not really much of a spoiler because I think she's going to make an impact in the very first chapter or two. So it's not much of a spoiler. But yeah, you'll see her again. I mean, it's always a problem with the series, right? Like it's like the sitcom problem, right? You know, they have this tension between the characters. Once they get together, it's like, well, it kind of kills the show. You know, like, what do you do now? They have kids. Rohan's not having kids, but they get married and they like fight over where the dishes go and who hung up like the dish towel, you know, and no one wants to read that. So it's always tricky, but you know, you have to try to find a new way to choose a little romantic element in each book, but not have it too repetitive or. Well, he'll find something someday, I think. Yeah, the cutest expression just there.
She walked up, says, "I can do it," and tries to yank him out of my hands.
She's helping.
That's great. Yeah, there'll be more. Tamarylinth will show up. I don't know. We'll see. I don't have every detail planned out. I think people who complain about outlining, they often say that, right? If I knew every detail, I would be too bored writing the book. And on some level, that's true, right? If I had plotted out everything that happens in the next 22 books, I don't know if I could sit down and write them. You know, because you have to give yourself. You know, presumably, that's going to take me 10 or 12 years, and I give myself something to think about during that time. So we'll have more stuff happen, but I will answer all the questions. That's the one thing I'm going to promise. I'll answer all the questions. Things will turn out pretty well, for the most part, and there won't be any of the super trigger warnings anywhere in the book. No children are going to get harmed, right? Not going to go all grimdark on you in book 11, and have.
I do like my comfort reads with good humor. Like not everything has to be grimdark.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against it. I mean, then I did this whole Twitter poll, and we talked this whole huge conversation about why people like grimmer things and darker things, and I have nothing but respect for anyone who says I really like my stories dark and people have to die, and I get that. There's all kinds of different reasons people feel that way. It's just not what I write, and I'm not going to. So you can read my books and it's not going to be sexual assault. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to explain why not. It's just not. So, that's just.
And that is 100% your choice, your world.
Yeah. That was kind of my motivation going in. I'm like, I'm going to write something where you should never read any of these books. At no point should you really feel too down. A little bit. There's some ups and downs, but not too bad.
Yeah, ups and downs, stakes. You do lose people in these books, but it's done in such a way that's not going to make you go cry in the corner for the next 6 weeks.
You shouldn't.
While your therapist hugs you so tightly.
Right. There's nothing wrong with books. There's nothing wrong with books that do that. People love books that do that.
I have found my taste lately leaning away from the darker stuff.
Yeah, yeah. People are entitled to like what they like. Again, I'm not trying to argue with anyone. It's just I want to be clear. What I'm writing, and what I'm writing is primarily an action story. It should be fun first, and there should be more to it than that. But fun. I got a review that I got a negative review. Someone's like, "Well, this is no what's Xi Jinlu's book? Three body problem."
Oh, Chixin-Lu? Yeah.
Yeah. So someone wrote, "This is no three body problem." Like, what about a guy being chased by a shark on the cover made you think it would be? Like, title to whatever review you want, but did you think it was going to be, three body problem? Like, did you read the title? Did you read the synopsis? Like, that was never going to happen. So people are funny. But,
So I think the moral or the final message of all this is read the books. They are excellent.
Please do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate the talk.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on and dealing with my absolute chaos.
Oh, no, it's great. I love chaos. I love chaos when it's someone else's. I have my own chaos.
This has been great.
No, you need to stay on.
Everything's quiet here. No babies.
I just got to make it through the next year or so, and then it'll calm down a little bit more.
Yeah. Mine are all teenagers, so it's a different kind of chaos.
Well, that said, once again, I want to just thank everybody for watching the interview while he tries to jump off my lap. And please subscribe to not only JCM Berne, as he has started his own channel, but also my good friend. There we go. This way. Kay from Caleb from Kay's Hidden Shelf. And make sure to check that description box down below to pick up copies of the Hybrid Helix if you have not done so already. Look, we've got our own Vanna White modeling these books for us. She is doing a stellar job. Unfortunately, it was not in the budget to pay her.
Volunteer. It's good.
Okay, volunteer. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging in there, and I just want to thank you, JCM, for setting out time to talk to us.
Thanks for having me. I loved it.
Thanks for having me.
And with that said, we are going to talk to y'all later. Peace out. Bye.